Hello friends, it's Dave here from SaveDex, bringing to you another Nintendo Switch review. This time I am looking at Summertime Madness. This is a first-person puzzle game which, on first impressions, made me think of The Witness, as that is another first-person puzzle game, so that makes sense. It was a game that Sophie and I enjoyed very much on the PS4 several years ago, so we were both looking forward to diving into this game and see if we had another challenging puzzle adventure that we could tackle together. A big thank you to Sometimes You for supplying us with a review copy. I would like to start by saying I am not going to compare this game to The Witness. That wouldn't really be fair because this is a smaller title by design and the puzzles are handled differently. You start off with a cutscene of a painter in Prague during the war. He makes a deal with the devil so he can enter the world of his paintings, but he would have to leave this world by midnight or his soul will be lost. This narrative offers up some context for some creative and sometimes abstract world design, as well as the art style of the world, giving off a painted look with bright colours and some nice effects such as the wind blowing through the grass. This whole escape by midnight sets up another game mechanic, the time limit. This time limit is optional and acts as a difficulty option. If you play Classic, then you have 6 hours to beat the game, and you can choose between that, 3 hours, or just have no time limit at all. I went for 6 hours as I like to live dangerously, but not too much. So in this world you move around with a first person view. You press A to interact with things, Y to toggle your speed, and the X button to bring out your clock to check the time. And this constant time check has been reminding me of 24, which I have been watching through again lately, so I pretty much feel like Jack Bauer when I play this game. You start off in this field and you find this ship, and we were having a great time here. It mostly came down to finding a switch to open and close gates and working out which order to pull switches in and which way to go, and it was fun to experiment to see what worked, and when it clicked it was more than satisfying. If you get stuck, you can bring up your clock and sacrifice 15 minutes to be given a clue. I only did this a couple of times and honestly, the clues I got were not very helpful. They just showed a vague picture that, if anything, just gave me something else I needed to work out. Eventually you'll find a door that leads to a new area, and you'll see some interesting statues and explore walkways that are like mazes where you need to rotate to work out a path, and you keep reappearing in the original field area with extra features to explore, such as the house with the cogs as we call it. Up to this point, we were having a great time overall, as I said, but the second half of the game is where the enjoyment slipped for us. But then you get to this area where you're having to go through this really abstract rooms with all the stairs in, which you go around in circles, and it was quite anxiety inducing. And there was this other puzzle where you had to balance things on some scales, and although I like this sort of thing really, the controls let this one down. When we arrived at the train station, this is where the game stopped being fun. It had the same types of puzzles as before, where you needed to explore this area, find a switch maybe which will open and close certain gates, then go through, find another switch which will open and close other gates, go back, backtrack, just find a way to open the switches in the right order. And while this sort of worked on the ship, it was a small area there and you could clearly see where things were being moved. This area though was huge, and I kept on getting lost and going back on myself. And when I asked for a hint, I just got a picture of a map and I couldn't really make out what anything was meant to be on there. I did eventually find my way around, and although I was learning the layout of the area eventually, it just felt like I had found the exit by chance, which meant there was no satisfaction, just relief that I was finally out of there. And sadly, the same is true of the areas that followed here. Although not as annoying as this area and certainly not as big, it just came to me guessing the right way without understanding what the solution is. And that's the thing about these puzzle games, they're only satisfying to work out if you know why the puzzle works that way. The controls, as I've already described, are simple enough to understand, but the movement is a tad too slow for me, even with the speed at maximum. and the controls are a bit awkward at how precise the crosshair needs to be on an object to interact with it, and it sometimes took a few sweeps of the camera for an icon to appear over an object. And this problem with the controls was more prominent in that scales puzzle I mentioned earlier, as selecting the right objects to put on them or take off them was really fiddly. So as you can probably tell, I wasn't a big fan of this game. I liked the presentation of it and the world it created, and the first half was fun enough, but I didn't enjoy the experience as a whole, and the second half especially was a big letdown. It costs £13.49 and I sadly cannot recommend it at this price. If you are curious, I'd say wait until it's at least half the price. I reviewed a game called Palindrome Syndrome Escape Room last year. I would say check that one out if you're looking for a first-person puzzle game. Its performance wasn't too great on the Switch, but the puzzles themselves are excellent. But that's just what I thought of the game. How about you? Does this look like the sort of game you would like? And what are your favourite puzzle games on the Switch? Platform, block or otherwise? Let me know in those comments down below, and it would be most spiffing of you to click that like and subscribe button down below. Thank you so much for watching everyone. See you in the next one.